Hello everyone, welcome to my tutorial about working with smart materials. In this tutorial I will show you how add material for this hammer, which consists of two parts. Let's increase the mesh density. For this, we can use the subdiv function. Increase the density of mesh for the other part. In vertex painting, a dense mesh is used. The higher the density, the clearer the texture will be. Now let's choose our metal. Let's see how it looks. Before we begin, let's create a layer to have more control, and we will do the fill using triplanar. As we can see, the texture resolution is not enough. To fix this, you need to increase the scale parameter. Now let's fill our model again. And we got a completely different result. This method is the fastest and allows you to apply material to all model. But you can also draw the material manually in those areas where it is necessary. So now let's add material to the hammer handle. And the handle of the hammer will be made of wood. And here it is very important to set the right direction for our material. Because if we don't take into account the direction of the wood grain, we will get a completely unrealistic result. Let's fix this. To do this, we'll undo the last action and go to the triplanar settings and change the rotation parameter. Now let's try to apply the material again with the new settings. Now it looks much better. The texture is in the right direction. The material is more realistic, but still quite boring. But don't worry, we'll fix it. Let's create another layer, in which we will add details to our handle. Layers help you customize your material more flexibly. Also, it helps to experiment with it, add details, and even mix it with other materials. Moreover, with the help of the operation panel, we can work with the color roughness and metalness channels, and visually change the appearance of your model. And the most important thing is that the operation panel helps to do this for each layer individually. So let's get back to our hammer handle. After we have assigned the main material for the hammer handle, I'm trying to add variety to the places where our texture doesn't look quite realistic or correct. To get the most interesting result, I highly recommend using photo references. This way you will know exactly what to do with your material to achieve the result you need. And it is also very important to think about how this object was used. To do this, ask yourself questions. Is this an old hammer or a new one? Who used it? And under what conditions? Think about the places where defects can most often be. In our case, on the handle of the hammer, the contact zone of wood and metal creates a friction zone, and traces of this interaction will be visible there. And we must take all this into account when painting our model. It is important to understand that the main goal here is not to pollute our object as much as possible, and do it harmoniously, sensibly, only in those places where it should be and is logical, so that the material feels natural and is beautiful and interesting for the viewer to look at. Tell the story of your model through the material, and approach this process as creatively as possible. And only then will you get a positive result and feedback from your viewers and fans. Great, our wooden handle already looks quite natural. Let's imagine that our hammer fell often, and it has chips. There are various defects, cracks, and abrasions, especially in those places where the metal experiences friction with our wooden handle. And don't forget that each tool can be customized to suit your needs. You can change the color, you can change the roughness, metalness, change the texture, customize all this for your model. Don't be afraid to experiment here, because you can always return to the default material settings. To do this, you need to click on the material icon and select Restore Last Save. As you can see, I selected the tools and manually draw the defects in those places where we have the maximum possible friction with metal. Please note that not only the color changes, but also the depth. Therefore, it can also be customized using the intensity slider, which is located here. And this parameter is available in almost every tool. So adjust it as you like and brush size to apply the material. So we are done with the wooden part for now. Let's work on our metal. I think you noticed how different it is from the material of the wooden handle. So let's experiment. Let's try other metal options. For example, I like this combination of metal better. So let's mix it with the base material using layer blending. This method allows you to combine materials and get a completely new type of material. For example, in our case, it is new metal or wood, and so on. This is the main principle of working with smart materials. Experiment, combine, and you will get very interesting combinations. You will want to repaint the models again and again, and get maximum pleasure from this process. And don't forget that your material is one of the key elements for conveying realism. It's not only light and shadow, but also the material itself. This is a very important aspect. If we look at different references of metal, we will note that metal does not have the same shine everywhere. In some areas it may be more matte. So I created tools that allow you to literally paint shine or matte by hand in those areas where it is really we need it. By the way, did you know that we can test our material using light? Simply swipe 3 fingers across the scene and the light will rotate around your model. In this way, changing the lighting, and you can see how the surface works with light. And this is very important. Now I notice that we have a seam in the center of the metal surface. It immediately spoils the whole impression and destroys all realism. But it's not scary because I can remove it with the smoothing tool. And this is possible because we don't have AUV, so we can change the geometry without major distortions of the base material. So I go back to our example, I added a layer, and now I add various small details. I go from the principle of from bigger to small. I added the main material, then mixed it with other material, and then start working with small details. And there are a lot of possibilities here. You can add rust, small scratches, dirt, dust, and get hundreds or even thousands of combinations of one material. And this is the main difference from the workflow of, for example, Substance Painter. You not only work with the material, but also with the geometry. You get full control over the model. And this approach is much closer to me as an artist. Of course, it is not entirely correct to compare these two applications, since they have different purposes. But for my work, the combination of Nomad and Smart Materials gives a fast and high-quality result. And at the end of the video, I will show how you can make a full 3D prototype of an asset in Nomad. Let's go back to my model. Since I added layers, I can now adjust the force on the surface, adding different effects without breaking the geometry of the entire model. This allows you to control all your changes. It also allows you to plan changes and test them against previous adjustments. As in drawing, pay attention to all parts. You can switch and see how the materials are combined. It is also important to highlight accent areas to which the viewer will pay maximum attention. Let me create another layer and add some rust. Since we are working with layers, we can always remove unnecessary parts by using the Del Layer tool. We can do anything. Let's paint it with old paint as if the paint has peeled off over time. Do whatever you want, the only limit is your imagination. For example, I made a tool that imitates various films, tapes, etc. Let's add it to the handle, as if someone decided to fix the handle using tape. Choose the desired color, size, and simply apply it to your model. Imagine that this item was used in some kind of criminal wars. We just take the blood effect and we already tell a new story about the subject. It is you the main storyteller here, and only you decide the visual method to convey the story of your subject. If you want, dirty the object, add sand, do everything that will help you convey your idea to the viewer. And Smart Materials will help you do it simply and quickly. You say, this is all good, but what if you need to export a model, for example, to Unreal Engine or to a Blender? Because the mesh is very dense and one such object will weigh a lot. But don't worry, I'll show you how to prepare your model for export using only Nomad. To do this, duplicate our object and move its side. Our main goal is to optimize our mesh. For this, we can use a voxel remesh or a quad remesher. And here's how you can change the color and adjust other parameters through the operation menu. Let's try a few options. I'll remove the material on our model to avoid confusion and to see the model's grid better. And now let's turn on the grid display by clicking on this icon below. And before all our manipulations, be sure to save the project, because sometimes Nomad can crash. The mesh through the voxel remesh turned out broken. We can smooth it, sometimes it works, but let's use a quad remesher and compare the result. Yes, the result is much better. Let's change the parameters and optimize the mesh grid for all parts. Now let's put our low poly model back in place. And let's make UV mapping for all parts of the hammer by going to this menu. Press UV and wrap. Now select the last part and do the same. Great, we have created unwrapped maps for our low poly models. Now our task is to bake textures from the high poly hammer model. When baking, I recommend hiding all other models so that there are no intersections with other parts of the model. Go to the same menu and click Bake Texture. Check the settings as I have. Everything is ready, take a look. It looks almost the same, but the mesh is much lighter. Accordingly, now it will be easier for you to export your model to other programs or game engines. And the last piece of advice, don't delete the high poly. If you plan to make changes to your low poly model, You can always bake your changes again. You can also make the model even better by exporting this model and doing retopology or refining the material in Substance. Imagine how many possibilities open up, how much faster it is than before. We spent 15 to 20 minutes on the entire model painting and got an almost finished asset, which can be used when creating, for example, game prototypes. I use this method to create 3D concepts, because it is much more efficient and better than 2D concept for many reasons. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if it was helpful. See you in the next video. Bye.